most of you know about the Gather movement and Movement Day. Some of you may not, but effectively we are a network of networks. We, at the moment, connecting with about 140 unity movements in cities and towns across the UK. And these are unity movements which are relational. From the ground up, they are prayerful, and they are missional, and they have a real heart for their place, and they want to see it blessed. So that just gives you a rough idea if you're not aware of what this is about, the context. The overall context is this word that is increasingly being used, recovery, from coming out of COVID. We thought we were moving into recovery, of course, in September, and then we thought we'd probably move into recovery after Christmas, and now we're thinking about recovery after Easter. But in a way, the recovery process is having to work now in tandem with dealing with the crisis as well. And this is being, referred to by commentators as the greatest challenge, really, since the Second World War, the end of the Second World War. So this is no small event, and as we know, I personally like to use the word recovery and renewal to describe really the hope that we don't just go back to what we were, but we could, of course, come back and, in the words of our mayor, build back better from what we were before. I think the challenge, and so, many of you are aware of this, but we're looking at unemployment rates at the moment rising from 3.8 to 6.8%. That's a huge amount of people in our country. And that unemployment is going to be hitting all sectors of the workplace. We're looking at the business recovery challenge. We're set to lose between 5 and 10% of small businesses. And of course, most of the businesses in this country are small businesses. There is a health recovery that's going to have to happen. All the appointments that were, of course, put back and deferred will themselves have to recover. There is a real fear around people leaving the health sector and being able to retrain or train new people to cover. Our nurses and doctors and staff in hospitals in particular, and care staff have been through, huge amounts, and some will be taking early retirement now. So we need to be aware that is part of it. The mental health crisis, which I think we are all concerned about, and certainly we're looking at figures about 250,000 people, and we're talking quite serious levels of mental health here. And COVID-19, is a quote, is a health emergency like nothing else in living memory. And we're aware of people that we know who are suffering from it. Certainly I do. And certainly in the little square that we live in, our council estate, we've had 2 suicide attempts in the last 10 months. And that's just, in a sense, tip of the iceberg. Then we're looking at the recovery for young people and children. And already there's conversations about how that's going to be clawed back for their education. Some sectors of children in certain class structures will be doing okay just about. But we're particularly worried, of course, about those from poorer backgrounds. I've got a neighbour here who has 5 children under the age of 11, and she has 1 mobile phone, and that's it. So, the whole idea of keeping up by teaching at home is a real challenge for her. Then there's the poverty question around food poverty, digital poverty, energy poverty, housing poverty. Then on top of that, this coming year, this year now, local authorities are dealing with significant cuts, which were planned for the last 2 or 3 years. So, there's not a lot of new money. Well, there's very little new money coming into the system. There certainly is for the crisis, but certainly not in terms of long-term recovery. And we have yet to hear from the Chancellor about that going forward. And then, of course, the growing gap between rich and poor, and racial inequality, and also inequality between cities and towns. And some will recover much better than others. So, this is a national emergency. And I suppose it's at that sort of time that churches themselves have to respond. I think some of the key values that are going to be very important going forward, regardless of whether you're in the church sector or whether you're in public sector, is that there's going to have to be a new commitment to breaking down silos. And that is happening certainly in my borough and across Greater Manchester. and we've heard it from other places as well. There's going to have to be a new imagination, new ideas and new models, not only to recover, but to renew. And I think there is a growing new localism where, you know, we are building on the assets of each resident and organizations in a locality. Those values are going to be important going forward. To recover and renew our cities and towns, we need three key partnerships. One, of course, will be the public service support, whether that's through national government, local government, or civic institutions. Crucial that. Secondly, the private sector support is going to be fundamental to the recovery. But alongside that, there is the VCFSE, which it is now called, the voluntary community, faith and social enterprise sector, which has already played such a significant role in the pandemic. And of course, we are lumped together within that context as the churches. But what does the church itself have to offer in this context? Well, obviously, as part of it, we need to realize, I think we do need to realize, we are the largest voluntary force in any city or town. This is quite a crucial understanding. You know, the largest organization of volunteers is the Scouting movement. That has 100,000 people. The largest sector of volunteering is in sports, which takes about 56% of volunteering. But the church itself, I mean, even with the figures of decline, 46,000 churches, 4.7 million people. The breakdown from 1.8 million in the Free Church, 1.3 million Catholics, 1.1 million Church of England Orthodox, 500,000, 35 ministers. Added to that are the buildings, the numbers of volunteers, the trained staff, the long track record that churches have in their community, and the wide scope of services that churches provide, from young people to children's services, homeless, and so on. The church, if we don't play our part in this recovery and renewal, our country will be the worse for it, significantly worse for it. And we need to realize that this is on our watch, and this is our responsibility as much as it is anyone else's responsibility. Thinking about the vision for the going forward, I think I would like my city going forward in, say, 5 years' time to be said of the church that together we loved our place at its time of deepest need. I said at the very beginning of this pandemic that people will remember those who help them in a crisis, and they will remember those who don't. And I think that is still true even at this stage. Together we loved our place at its time of deepest need. And I think the challenge then is for the Christian community operating as a network of networks to be so strategic and coordinated that it plays a significant role in the recovery and the renewal of its city or town following this COVID crisis. By unified working, I think this is the dream, isn't it? That by unified working with the public, private, and other third sector providers, we are able to see in our place, people find jobs, businesses flourish, improve provision for food, people helped out of debt, maximizing their income, supporting those with mental health issues, helping people develop spiritually, and coming alongside the isolated to support children and young people in their development. That's really the vision. That's the challenge as we go into this crisis. Now, this movement, and sorry, I've just picked out some of the places here, and some of you are on this call, but I could have picked out a whole load of other places, are already responding beautifully to this crisis. And, the stories we're having from Nottingham and Reading and Bristol and Teesside and Bath and Sunderland and many other places, I think are significant. When the dust settles, and we look at how many people were fed by the churches, it's going to be a very, very high proportion of our country who are fed during this crisis by the churches. So I think, we're not standing in a sense from a place of weakness and thinking we haven't done anything. We have actually done a lot. And I just want to give testimony and honor to those cities and towns who have really risen to this challenge. But the bigger challenge going forward, the huge challenge, is the recovery. The crisis is one thing, the recovery is another. At this time, in this place, responding to the crisis, that's the challenge. Now, I think this is relevant, therefore, for those of you who have established unity movements already. You're well operating together. You've responded well. but I think this may be may be applicable for you to actually focus your ministry at this moment, to really focus down on what the issues are. I think it's going to be relevant for cities and towns where there isn't much organized unity. If ever there was a time to get our act together, now is the time. I think this is a message for unity movements that are stuck and need to repurpose, and you get like that. I understand that. And I think this is perhaps a model going forward for larger cities with several networks within them to align to a common cause. And we do have some cities that have, 3, 4 unity movements. We have some cities which have different networks within them, mainly because they're quite large. But there is an opportunity, therefore, to align around a common cause, a movement for recovery. We need to be listening to the city, and we need to be listening to God in how to respond to the crisis. And I think this is what movement for recovery probably is. It's bringing together as many churches and charities and networks as possible. Certainly, you'll hear from the story in Greater Manchester that it was a very inclusive process to the church to basically say, guys, if you love the Lord Jesus Christ, we want you part of this. Bringing them together in some kind of coordinated action, a network of networks connecting better, supporting each other and responding to need and finding gaps. Now, some of you do this already, but I think for a lot of us, this may well be expanding what we do, and it may be really focusing down on what we do. We think it's a possibility for this to become a real engagement vehicle with the public, private, and third sector. And when you hear from Ian Rutherford and the conversations we've been having with the mayor, Andy Burnham, across Greater Manchester, I think he has, Ian will tell you, but he has 3 or 4 Christian groups who all decide that they are the Christian group he should talk to. And sometimes, these guys don't know who to talk to. They need to know who to talk to. By bringing together a network of networks, then you provide that structure to enable them to actually engage and for us to engage with them. This is a real challenge for us to become commission ready. There will be funds coming down. There are funds already released. There will have to be significant funds. Now, often the church, because of what it does, is quite micro. It's this church doing this and this church doing this. And because we're not joined up together, we may get some commissioning, small amounts of commissioning for very small projects. I think the dream here is that actually there could be some significant commissioning coming down through a movement for recovery, which then goes out very quickly into the churches and into the Christian charities. The authorities need one phone number, one website, and I think we need one expression of social media together. So that's something that is important. If that commissioning money does come down, then there's going to be a need for some legal and financial structure to receive and to distribute those funds. Some of you already have that. What we don't want, and this is important, I think, is that we don't want to replace or overshadow existing expressions of unity, existing organizations or ministries in a city or town. This can't be seen as a threat. This has to be seen as a positive step. This is about a network of networks where we all flourish and we all gain support, becoming even better than we are. What we also don't want is to create a lot of new work for already overworked and under-resourced churches. And this is, again, important. It's going to be enough for our churches and our charities to get up and running what they did before. Anyway, this must be a support for that. This mustn't just suddenly be, well, there may be new ministries that need to arise, but I don't think that this is a measure that says we've now got to do everything new. We may need to develop and renew what we do. That's another question. But it's not about creating a whole load of new work. It's about actually bringing together the work that is already done and enabling it to happen better. And it's certainly not to create any large centralized structure that sucks in resources and creates needless bureaucracy. If it does that, it's missed the point. I think it's about, in terms of the engagement coming down, it's from the civic authorities. The civic authorities can provide us intelligence on need, and I think that's important for us as well. And also there may be opportunity for money coming down. As we engage with that process, we are there to serve the city. We're there to be more strategic and coordinated. And there's the Christian ministry then happens on the ground. But I think the movement for recovery, one of the key things is that engagement line, who will the civic authorities in your town and city turn to and relate to and support? As we are more and more aligned together, a network of networks, we give that greater opportunity for that to actually happen. So the challenge is, together we loved our place at its time of deepest need.